What am I to do?
Welcome to He Said, She Said Razor Branding Podcast with Michael Russo and Jaci Russo. To learn more about how to improve your brand, visit brandRUSSO.com.
Michael, our guest today, I thought Charlie was fantastic. You know, when I saw his bio and he's the CEO of RightMetric and they do strategic research, I did kind of think he might be a numbers nerd who's going to come in
I was
with
dreading it. I was dreading it. I
pocket
was like, I don't,
protector and the
yeah,
glasses and give us kind of a nerdy rundown of data and numbers and metrics. And boy, was he the exact opposite of that.
I know. I had a really busy morning, and I was like, I knew we had a podcast, and I pulled up the bio because I was well prepared as always with my research and reading through everything. I was like, all I saw was data and nerd. I was like, oh, this is going to be painful, I bet. And it was quite the opposite.
Quite.
Yeah, a very smart, great creative approach, and very aligned philosophically in a lot of what we do and how they do things. Obviously, he does it on a much bigger scale, I think, working for companies like Red Bull, and just, the amount of what they've done over the past 20 years is amazing.
Yeah. No, he's awesome. And I think y'all are all going to really enjoy this. And if nothing else, he talks a lot about the fact that there's so much data out there. It's not a desert. We're drowning. So how do you use your data better to make better choices? You look at what people do, not what they say.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being here, Jackie. I know Jackie's under the weather today, but
I am. I'm
I
just
think
getting
you're a
out of
trooper.
incubation. I was in quarantine, but I'm back at the office day one and tired. I'm going to take a nap soon.
Well, we appreciate it. All right, let's get to it.
You're welcome. Okay.
What am I to do when the day is through?
Hey, Charlie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be
We're
here.
very excited. Right before this, I was in a Zoom with a prospective client, and it was, a bunch of people sitting around a board table firing questions at me to decide if
Yeah.
I was worthy of being hired, which is how I spend a lot of my time, it seems. And they asked me what I find to be the biggest challenges that businesses make, whether when starting the business or in launching a new product. And I said, lack of research.
Huh.
And then I got to go on this podcast with you and talk about research, and it made me
Yeah.
very happy.
It's like we planned it.
Almost, yeah. And so, am I wrong, or do you also see a lack of research clouding people's choices?
Yeah, I think your observation is bang on, but I don't necessarily know if it's a lack of research, because I think there actually is, depending on the organization, a whole bunch of research out there. It's more, how relevant is that research? So I think it's one of two things. It's either like there's no research, or there's a bunch of research, but it's not exactly relevant for what I deem the most relevant, or what I think many marketers deem the most relevant for the marketing activities that need to happen today. So let me give
I
you an
was
example.
Well, I was just thinking that as Jack was asking that question, in my head it was exploding, thinking how much some, because nowadays it's relevant. I mean, people can go on ChatGPT, they can type in things, they
Totally.
send us brief after brief after brief after stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many marketing reports that sit on counters that never get used, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it's like we try to really pinpoint what we want into what we're trying to do, which is our process system. But
Yeah.
generally, it can get off the rails so quick.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I think, to have a good piece of research, you need good inputs to get a good output. And I think oftentimes what we're seeing is the inputs coming from the brand side might not be the best because marketers are drowning and they have so much going on. But I also think that the way in which it's done. So let me give an example. Before I co-founded the company I run now, I worked on the brand side for many years. I worked at Red Bull, I worked at Aritzia, women's fashion, and I worked at Arc'teryx. We used to work with kind of quote unquote the big guys, Nielsen, Gartner, whatever. And I would sit there, and our job was, how are we doing digital marketing, right? So what kind of ads are we buying? What kind of content are we creating, et cetera? And they'd come in and they go, oh yeah, we can help you solve all of that. We can help you figure out what to do with all of that. And then what they would do is they would go run a survey. Well, the last time I checked, getting a bunch of weirdos and bringing them into a room and asking them questions and then getting them to lie to you and then handing that back to me as gospel doesn't help me figure out what kind of content should we put on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube today. So I think just starting there. So going back to the question of, is there enough research? I think there's a bunch of research of what I just described, where we've set up this infrastructure on the brand side where it's like, yeah, we work with these vendors and they go away and they're asking people questions and people are happily giving them an answer. But that one of my favorite books is called Everybody Lies, and it's by this guy named Seth Stevens-Dewitowitz. And the whole thesis of the book is he used to be a data scientist at Google, and his whole thing was Google search data is the most valuable data set in the history of human psychology because it's completely unbiased. There are things that all three of us have typed into Google that we'll never say out loud to another human being. And so that kind of hammers home this point of don't listen to what people say, watch what they do, because that's going to give you an actual barometer of their values, of behavior, of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, yeah, there's tons of research out there that probably isn't very helpful to marketers. And then on the flip side of that, yeah, there's people who are just kind of fully flying blind and going out there and, giving themselves a tough time before they even get started.
I think there's something about that too. Like we do a lot of, if at times we may get into more, deep data dives and things like that, but
Yeah.
a lot of times we approach it from a psychographic standpoint. We really want to get to know people and have them talk. But I think in the first 20, 30 minutes of a conversation, it's all nothing. It's like rote answers, and you have to be a good interviewer to dig in deeper, to get them to start talking, to get off subject to where they're not even talking about what they're talking about anymore. And somehow then they start getting honest, and then you start
Yep.
getting some nuggets, and it may not even be about what you're asking about, but
Yeah.
somehow you get to understand the environment, by doing those things.
Yeah.
But that's a different tact, I think, versus, going through data that's provided and saying, how do I read it? How do I understand it? Who's going to translate it for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that's I think what AI can be super helpful. Like that's one of the things we should all be really excited about with AI is we can use AI to help comb through the vast amount of data. Because like in marketing, we're not starving, we're drowning. Right? Like there's so much of it there, and it's actually how are we organizing it? How are we prioritizing it? How are we using that as different signals to help us make decisions? But yeah, I think to your point, again, there are people who could in their mind think they're actually honestly answering you, and then they do the complete opposite in their behavior. So I think like they could be the most well-intentioned person who's like, they almost try to like shrink the shrink, so to speak. They're like, oh yeah, like I understand. I'm gonna not be biased and I'm gonna say da 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 da. And then you actually down the line like watch their behavior and they do the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that I think is a core underlying thing. And we see this in different data sets all the time where it's like, oh, this is the stereotype of that group of people. And then you actually look at the behavior and you're like, what are you talking about? And I actually have a funny example. So my mom is, sorry, mom, you're 67. Shocker. My mom is 67. I was over at her house. This is about 2 years ago. I was over at her house and she has an iPad that sits on the kitchen counter. And we're in a conversation talking about something. And when you forget a fact and you're like, I just want to Google that. I want to look that up. So she goes, hold on, Charlie, stop. Let me Google that. So she walks over to the iPad, and me being the like audience behavior nerd, I'm kind of kicking back, like watching her. And she touches the YouTube app, and my head kind of starts to tilt like this. And she types in something, and the results load. And then she goes to press a video. And I go, Mom, stop. What are you doing? Fully knowing that she doesn't know that YouTube is owned by Google, right? But she said Googling, and she goes, well, Charlie, I don't want to read, I want to watch. And she touches the video, and off she goes. Now, that behavior we would actually associate to young ADHD kids who have short attention spans. My mom is 67 years old, right? So these behaviors are kind of transcending. And if we actually asked my mom during a survey, she might not have said, like, when do you Google something? She would have gone, yeah. Well, I just watched her go to YouTube instead by default, right? So again, what people say versus what people do.
Right.
No, I love that analogy. We did work for a radio station a bunch of years ago, and they came back to us with their demographics, and they were reprogramming everything. They were like, we're going to go oldies because our demographic is older moms, and this and that, and because based on just the numbers, and
Yeah.
we were like, wait, you're missing something here. The same demographic, they're having kids older. Their kids they're not your parents. You know what I'm saying? And so they don't view themselves as an oldies classic Rock. They want to be younger and hipper. They're being younger longer because their
Yep.
kids are younger long. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
it had shifted into a whole nother category.
Yep.
And so ended up changing all their programming, and it was very successful. But it was like
Yep.
they were, if you went just on the numbers, it wouldn't have told the whole story.
Totally. And I think, but you actually point out a really good point that I think is worth flagging. Here I am kind of crapping all over traditional market research. I do think it has a place.
Hmm.
But I think what's really fascinating is if you take that kind of self-reported behavior of what people say and you watch what that same group of people does and you look at those two things together, you will see similarities and differences. And that is where a ton of nuggets are to get an understanding, because you can go, oh, this value that they say actually shows up as this behavior. Cool. How can we take those two signals as strategists and use that to plan communications, activations, et cetera, et cetera?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, as we're talking about this, I'm reminded of a car dealership group we did work for early in our agency's history. And we had a memory-based kind of survey right when they came onto the lot to look to buy
Yeah.
a car. What TV station do you watch? Where'd you hear about us? Whatever.
Yeah.
And the statistics on the radio station, which was a local smart person station that they
Yeah.
claimed that they listened to. Okay, great. Then in the service bays, when they bring their cars in for work, the service technicians would write down what the radio is
Oh,
actually
that's
set to.
genius.
And it was a rap station. And I'm like, oh,
Yes.
you want people to think you're highbrow, but
course.
you're dropping it low in your car.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right? Of course. I think about the same thing with books. People go, oh, yeah, have you read this book? Oh, of course I have. Great book.
Right.
No, they haven't. It just sounds good.
Correct.
And guilty. Like, I've done that before where I'm like, I don't want to seem dumb to these people. Yeah, sure. Of course I've read that book.
Right. Right.
So-
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's impossible. Or I don't ever watch TV. I don't have a TV. And I know at midnight they're sitting
Oh.
there with a gallon of Haagen-Dazs watching some kind of really bad sitcom, whatever, or reality show. It just,
The Summer I Turned Pretty, Michael. That's what we're all watching right now. The Summer I Turned Pretty.
You know what's so funny, you mentioning that? I was speaking at a conference a couple months ago, and it was a social media conference. And I go, who here's on Facebook? And there's 1,000 people in the audience, and like 20 hands went up. And I was like, don't lie to me. You're all on it.
Right.
Like, there is no way that Meta can sit on their earnings calls and say we have 2 billion monthly active users. Like there isn't that many people on the internet in the world, like in terms of like penetration, and like we're all there, whether we want to admit it or not.
Right.
But it's just like, it's not, Facebook isn't cool.
Right.
Right. So like, it's just such an interesting thing. It's to Michael's point where it's like, yeah, we all do it. It's just, we don't actually necessarily want to say it out loud, but that doesn't mean that that's not really valuable signal for us as marketers. I think about some campaigns that like our team has like found and highlighted to our customers before. So Taco Bell is doing a ton of stuff on Twitch. That's really weird. Twitch
Yeah.
is like known for streaming and gaming. Well, what Taco Bell realized was a lot of their biggest order volume came from like late night munchies when people are watching streamers, right? And so they were like, oh, how can we take this behavior that we see in our sales data and how can we map that to the type of people who are actually buying a Crunchwrap Supreme at 11:35 p.m.? Why don't we actually use that and go on that platform, advertise there, create content that feels native to the platform, and we're actually able to merge these two things together. Now, they're not shaming people for that behavior. They're just going, oh, wow, there's a huge group of people that are there. Let's go fishing where the fish are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think what you're telling me is that the best marketers are stalkers.
Absolutely. Whether we want to admit it or not. And I actually think it goes further than marketers. I think the best businesses, period. Like corporate espionage as a business practice. Like we can go back. Where do you think Apple got a whole bunch of their early ideas from? Right? Like you can go back over the history of business, whether we go to, the printing press, the textile mill, like, well, welcome to capitalism. Welcome to
Right.
business.
So what should marketers start doing differently? We agree that there's all this data out there, whether people
Yeah.
are using the research or not. And we
Yep.
know AI exists and everybody's still trying to figure out where it fits into the mix. We know that there's more clutter than ever before and everyone's drowning. No one has enough time. How do we make the world a better place?
Yeah, so I think there's a bit of a spectrum, right? So depending on who's listening to this, I think it actually starts with getting your own house in order. So if you don't actually have good visibility into what's happening within your business from a data perspective, and when I say your business, I mean your marketing organization, you know, get your Google Analytics in place. Know how many people are coming to your site. Get your social analytics in place. Get your email analytics. Like get those. Those are table stakes. Those are the basics. Now, that can take you a pretty solid amount of the way there. Then I think what happens is you start to bump up against these blind spots. And so this is more for like bigger brands. And this is like a lot of the work we do now. And this was the pain that I felt when I sat on the brand side. So when I sat at Red Bull, when I sat at Aritzia, I had a really good idea of what was happening in our ecosystem. But if I'm tasked with growing that group of people who are in our ecosystem, me looking in my ecosystem to try and find more people isn't really helpful to reach the people outside of our ecosystem. And so this idea of looking externally becomes very, very valuable. However, to your point, it's super fragmented. There's no shortage of things. So how do we start to A, gather that stuff, B, make sense of it, and then C, use it to drive action? So what we feel, and what all the customers that our company works with, all of them have a whole bunch of blind spots. Usually they come to us because they're like, hey, you know, we have a pretty good understanding of what's working well within our existing kind of approach, but we're tasked with new category, or we have to drive a ton of growth, and kind of, you know, what we've been doing for the last 5 years isn't really working, right? And so this idea of looking externally, and I think what a lot of marketers don't really understand is how many data points out there that you can actually access, right? They didn't even know that they could see that. And I'll give an example. We worked with a big grocery company in Canada, and you know, it's a multi-billion-dollar company, and there's kind of two grocery giants in Canada. And one of the grocery giants had just taken their flyer, their paper flyer, and moved it digital. And that's like huge for the grocery industry. It's like, oh my God, we're not going to mail out the thing to everybody. No, we're going to an app. And so the company that we were working with was still doing the paper mail out flyer. And about 3 months before the company had just gone digital. And I'm sitting there with the CMO and their kind of, you know, whole marketing team. And they're like, yeah, you know, like they've gone digital. I was like, well, why don't you just look into like how that's going for them? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, open up, see how many people are using their app, see how many people are coming to that page on the site, see where they're coming from, see, are they running a ton of ads to incentivize that behavior? And we literally opened up a couple tools that our team had access to. And I watched his brain kind of like break a little bit, because all of a sudden he went, I didn't even know that that was an input that I could look at. And now that I know that that's an input that I can look at, that's going to change the way that I strategize. And so that's something that I think most marketers get wrong, is there's this whole external world out there, and it's all just hiding in plain sight. And now there's so many free tools or lightweight tools that people can start to use. One of them that comes to mind is SparkToro from Rand Fishkin, right? Like that's an amazing audience research tool. SimilarWeb has a free tool. SEMrush, like there's so many of these tools kind of popping up now. It's just a matter of, are you going to use them? Now, there's a whole bunch of super enterprise expensive ones. And it depends on what you're trying to do, but that information is there. It's just a question of, do we want to look at it or not? And are we going to sit there and be content with these blind spots and just pretend they're, oh yeah, I don't really know what's going on there, but I'm just going to charge ahead? Or are we actually going to confront those blind spots and remove them?
Well, when you're talking about confronting them, though, too, I mean, I just got off a call actually right before this with a client of ours. They're called IDS. They do e-discovery work, like global e-discovery work. And they were talking about terabytes of information going through a client, because they work with like legal firms. And when they need to go to court and they need to go find this email that's buried from 3 years ago that says they did something, maybe they said they did, that they really didn't do, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And digital forensics, that kind of thing. Yep. But as they were talking about the numbers and the vast amounts of data that they're processing right now and how it continues to grow, and there's like a lot of numbers on that, is there a thing, and it'd be a great title for a book, like data fatigue and how to avoid it or how to embrace it or whatever it is, because it is, like you said, there's an abundance of it, but it can be exhausting, I think, when you start looking at, I mean, we do it for a living as far as looking at the information and try to use it. It is exhausting because there's so much of it. Where do you get it? How do you process it? It's coming at you from all sides, and to where you end up almost paralysis by now. You don't do anything because you can't even know where to go.
Yeah. And so just so I'm hearing the question right, like it's exhausting for the marketer.
Yeah, and the consumer as well, or somebody, the business person that has to look at all that stuff, and say, I don't know where to go with this. This is making my head
Yeah.
hurt, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that it's interesting, right? Because we as consumers, in my opinion, actually love that data because it powers the personalization that we all crave. Without that data, you can't have personalization. Spotify isn't going to serve you that new hot track that all of a sudden you love without a whole bunch of data behind the scenes. Instagram and TikTok aren't serving you that video that you didn't even know you wanted to watch without that data. So, like, again, what people say versus what people do, we actually love that personalization, which means deeply we love data. Now, from the like marketing perspective, yeah, oh yeah, marketers are stressed. It sucks to be a marketer right now, right? Do more with less. Oh, what are we doing about this thing that didn't exist 2 weeks ago, et cetera, et cetera. Like I get that. I think this is where AI can play a massive role. And this is why every marketer that I talk to, I'm like, how are you getting your hands dirty with AI? Not to become a data scientist, but just to become a clear thinker. And how can you use this to do a lot of the heavy lifting? And so again, I am awful with Excel. I'm awful with spreadsheets, but using AI and being really, really crisp with my inputs, whether that's prompts or questions that I'm trying to solve or et cetera, I actually think that can get people 80% of the way there. It's just a matter, I think, we as marketers don't want to be seen as dumb, and AI is this new thing, and I think everybody needs to get comfortable with this beginner mindset again and start tinkering with it. But there are some people in organizations who are far too proud of like, I'm the senior person and I kind of know everything. No, you don't. This technology came around 2 years ago and it's not going anywhere, by the way. So I think it's this really interesting thing where we're going to start to see as this continues, we're going to start to see good from great be separated from a company perspective, from a marketing perspective, but also from like an employee talent perspective. People are going to see in their organization who knows what they're doing and who's not, who doesn't know what they're doing, because this technology and this tool is going to take the A players and make them A plus plus players, and the C players are just going to kind of be overwhelmed and maybe resist and put their arms up. So that's going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah. And I think, you know, our digital fingerprints on everything. And I think if people, you know, it's like at some point I've kind of given up on that part of it. You know, I mean, everybody wants to have cookies, everybody wants this, and it's like, you know, you can't operate in the world without leaving a
Yeah.
footprint across the
Well,
platforms. You know.
you raised such a great point. Remember hashtag delete Facebook? Yet it's still the big, like, like everyone talks a big game. Oh, I'm so, if you talk about people and privacy, yeah, of course they'll say I want privacy, but they also choose convenience. If they're choosing to carry a smartphone around, don't talk to me about privacy. You've chosen convenience.
Mhm.
Right? I actually can give an example. Right around the Cambridge Analytica stuff back in 2017, I was working at Aritzia. I was the head of social media, and I was asked to speak at Hootsuite, which is like the social media management platform. And I'm talking, and there's like 200 people there. And there was this woman in the back of the room who we all have that person, we in high school or in university where it's like there's that person in class who thinks that they're the only person in the room and the teacher is talking to them. She was one of them. She was very nice after, but she was one of them. So we start having this conversation. We were talking about Facebook, and this woman screams from the back, like, I don't think it's fair that I should have to agree to a privacy policy. She starts kind of lecturing on about privacy, blah, blah, blah. And I first kind of thought, like, what are you doing at this talk? Like, how did you get to this event?
Who let
But
you
she
in?
kind of, right? Yeah, who let you in? She kind of started like lecturing about privacy, and the moderator's kind of looking at me, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll respond. And I asked her, I said, ma'am, can you please reach into your pocket? And are you carrying a cell phone? And she goes, well, yeah. And she pulls out her phone, and I go, can you hold it up? And it was an iPhone. And I go, it's pretty hard to take you seriously when you're carrying one of those devices around. And the entire everyone started like howling with laughter. And I was like, I don't mean that to be rude. I'm just saying
Yeah.
you're talking this huge game here, but like you probably used Google Maps or whatever to get here, right? Your ticket to be scanned to come in here from Eventbrite was on that device. You probably found out about this on Facebook, right? So I'm kind of like, or an email or whatever. So yeah, I think this idea of privacy and convenience, it's a fundamental binary choice. It's one or the other. And now I think what she was trying to say was like, it isn't fair, but I'm like, okay, you're right. It wasn't fair, but you chose to pay the price of admission and carry the device around.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So I don't know.
Facebook's
It's a
struggling right
really
now too. I
interesting
mean,
thing.
she's right though. Facebook's about to go under. I mean, they're really struggling these days. I mean, you know, just try to keep up, and you know,
Yeah,
no voice, and, you know,
I
whatever.
know. It's so tough. Yeah, I mean, it must be tough for them to make payroll every 2 weeks.
You know, I was I called Jackie the other night. I went to Walmart to get something. I was trying to get some golf balls, and they were behind lock and key, and I
Yeah.
couldn't find a person in the world that had a key in the whole place. This is a giant
Yeah.
super Walmart, and I was so frustrated. I was there for half an hour, and I called her frustrated, and I was like, "Yeah, they're probably gonna really struggle without my business. I mean, what am I gonna do? I'm boycotting Walmart. Like Walmart's not going anywhere. My little $20 purchase for golf balls
Yeah.
is not going to affect them. So, again, I chose that. I chose to go
Yeah.
there. I chose that
Yeah.
experience, and it's on me more than anybody.
Yeah, and I mean that probably brings a larger conversation about the state of the world, probably different talk show. But I think about I think about like the same thing with Facebook. She might not necessarily be on Facebook, but she uses Facebook to log into XYZ website. Okay, you're on it. Like you've still chosen convenience. And so yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I think the balance is from an ethics perspective, how is that data being protected? And that's actually why I think it's genius that Apple has leaned into the privacy thing. It's genius, right? Because they know that that's what people want to hear. And Apple is doing some interesting things from a privacy perspective. But it's that balance of how do you provide that personalized, tailored experience in a way that doesn't feel like you're being stalked. And for marketers, how can they plan their activities to be like, we get you, without creating that feeling for the end consumer of that's weird, they're stalking me. It's a fine balance, right? Simple, not easy.
One of your topics I was reading, and I'd love to talk about this, why your competitor's bad creative is still beating you. That is the bane of my existence as a creative director and somebody who thinks that we do good creative and messaging. When I see things that are out there that are getting the coverage, getting the likes, getting the whatever, and somebody will say, well, a good example, we had a client and they posted something and it was like something about a dog. They had a dog day or something, and it got a lot of hits. And I was like, yeah, it's a cute dog. People are going to like that dog, but it has nothing to do with what you're doing. It's not going to sell more product. It's not going to do anything for you in that space.
Yeah.
But for them, it saw traction. So they were like, let's do more like this. I'm like, well, we have to stay the course. We have to do what we're trying to do. And I mean, maybe we can do that better, but it was bad. It was against the brand. But again, it got resonance with that particular audience. So it's a battle, trying to find the right mix of that, especially in social media.
Yeah, I mean, I think that how can you stay true to your brand values while also adapting to the reality of the market, right?
Mhm.
So, this idea of I also think it's important to take a step back of like, what is good creative? Because candidly, like I work on the analytics research data side. I actually started as a video producer. Like I'm a camera nerd. So like I was making pretty pictures, and what I got tired of was giving videos that I slaved over to crappy marketers to bury on the internet. That's actually what pushed me to get into distribution. And those two things are so intrinsically linked. I think the problem though, and we'll like before we actually talk about the why looking at your competitors is a great way to, I think, get ahead, is there are so many creatives that sit in marketing teams that think they are the arbitrator of good. And you know what? If you want to be Steven Spielberg or George Lucas, Hollywood's that way. Go. But if you're
Mhm.
going to sit in a marketing organization, marketing is art for the sake of commerce, commerce being the key word. This is a business.
Yep.
The art gallery's down the road. Go make some art, but then stop collecting your paycheck, right? So I think that this idea of what is good, we need to actually get an understanding of the people that we're trying to reach and the signals they give us back. So I'll give an example. When I worked in women's fashion, which is hilarious because look at me, to those of you listening, I'm a bald bearded guy. When I worked in women's fashion, we would sit there and go, like this isn't good. We'd sit in our room thinking we are, we know what's up. And then we'd put something out there and our audience would go crazy. And it might have been a meme, it might have been a crappy iPhone photo of some styling on the street or whatever. And our creative director would go nuts. And he would go, this is just bad content. And guess what? Our audience would go ham for it. They'd go crazy. And so I'd go, who's right? Is this technically on brand? And at our time, like it was like, okay, we celebrate design, we celebrate vibes, we celebrate aesthetics, et cetera, et cetera. And so like it's this fine balance. So I agree with you, Michael, but I also go like, who actually is the judge and the jury? In my mind, it's actually the consumer. Our job is to put stuff in front of the consumer and use that signal as back. And I've been there. I've put out stuff where I'm like, this sucks. I hate that we're putting this out there, but it goes out there and it pops off. And I'm like, well, shit, I
It
was wrong.
worked.
Yeah, it's a battle. I mean, our agency is structured around creative and strategy. Jackie's a strategist, I'm the creative director, and
Yep.
from day one, it was two sides of the coin, and
Of
there
course.
are battles with that.
Yeah.
It is a struggle sometimes. Struggle is very real, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's made us survive 20 years in this
Of
business
course.
because we are balanced in that regard. And there's many
Yeah.
times where she tells me to get off my high horse and say, "Look, you just like." Quit pushing that agenda. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not right for this, whatever. And I have to agree. It's a
Yeah.
hard sell to my team too. But we
Yeah.
have on our Jackie just sent me a text on our wall and when you enter our building, we have this quote that we had there since day one, and it's by a guy named Jeff Richards. He taught at a school in Texas, but it was
UT.
UT. Creative without strategy is called art. Creative with strategy is called advertising. And that is
Yep.
kind of our mantra from day one. So I
Yeah.
totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a tough deal. I mean, a lot of times I'll talk to schools or students and I tell them, I'm like, look, if you're in this game to be an artist, you're in the wrong business. It's going to
Totally.
crush you. It's going to
Yeah.
crush you. Because this is my art and it's so personal to me and it needs
Oh,
to be
yeah.
artistic and you need to have pride in that creative process. But man, if you're that stuck to it, it's going to break you. I mean, when you have
Yeah.
everybody and their brother critiquing you and telling you how to do things and what they like and don't like, because everybody's got an opinion, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to creativity, because advertising, marketing, it's such an easy touch point. We're all immersed in it and we
Yeah.
can all touch it and feel it. And we all have an opinion.
Yeah.
I can't go to my doctor and tell him how to do his job, but I can sure as hell tell a designer how to design something because I know what I like.
Absolutely. Everyone who has an Instagram account actually knows marketing inside and out, and they're the expert, and we don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's funny.
And
One of the things that you just said, I actually have a story. So I worked in marketing at Red Bull, and this is like a really interesting example of creative. So this is, almost a decade ago. It was the world's first double backflip on a snowmobile. Crazy. It was happening in Sweden. There was an athlete there. Now, in typical Red Bull fashion, we had the big production. And I'm talking like the helicopter filming the guy doing the thing, right? So like big budget, like insane. And this is around 2016, 2017. And so what had kind of started to pop off, we had noticed that a lot of the biggest performing videos in the world were actually iPhone videos. We were seeing like shaky iPhone videos from like BuzzFeed and whatever. And we were like, huh, that's interesting. And so what we did was we sent the production crew to Sweden where it was happening. And we also sent our intern, and our intern had a phone. And literally wherever that A camera went, the intern was there with the phone, just like this. And we filmed both. And so at the end, when he first did the thing, there was, the fancy camera on a gimbal, like whatever, there's a drone and da-da-da, and then our intern. And so we had a 3-minute video of like epic, the build up, the whole kind of story and everything. And then we had this minute-long iPhone clip. And what it was the intern standing beside the camera, and you could actually see a little bit of the camera, like almost like behind the scenes. You could see a bit of the camera out of the corner of the frame. The athlete goes up, does the double backflip, lands, and then everybody around them screams because it's the first ever, and starts running. And you can hear the intern running, like huffing, puffing. And you get over there, and the athlete, Daniel, is on his knees screaming and crying because he's just done this world first that's never been done. We published both of those two videos. The iPhone video performed 3-1, did 30 million views. And so, okay, sure, there's the big production, and we did both because we actually were able to get a bunch of great, awareness, coverage, attention through that kind of like longer form thing. But it was really, really interesting, this rise of like this kind of unpolished stuff. So again, I think this idea of like what is good, anytime someone says, oh, that's not good content, I get goosebumps because I'm just like, what are we talking about? Like, what does that even mean? You didn't like it? Great. Well, it doesn't matter if you don't like it unless you are the actual end consumer. And just because you might be the end consumer, that also doesn't mean that you're representative of the whole group that you're trying to reach.
Carly, I am representative. I know more than everyone. I have the pulse of the country in my hand.
Same. I feel like Jackie, Jackie, that, yeah?
I mean, first of all, I represent 51% of the population. Y'all only represent 49% of it.
That's true.
And neither of you are representing people with hair. So I think you need to pump the brakes
That's
on
low,
knowing your
man.
audience.
That
You
is
know what?
low.
I think Michael and I both represent the facial hair, though.
You
We
do.
got that going for us.
You do. Y'all can own that category for sure. But so while we're on the subject of good creative versus bad creative and strategy, I
Yeah.
need somebody to explain the limu emu to me because They annoy me, and yet
I
I
love it.
remember them. It doesn't mean I'm going to go to Liberty Mutual for insurance. But when we talk about these campaigns, and I know we're way off the topic now, but
No, this
we
is
talk about
good.
these campaigns that we like or don't like, that work or don't work. Sometimes they don't seem to be connected. Stuff I don't like works, and stuff I love doesn't work, and I don't get it.
Well, I can't tell you why. I have not changed insurance companies. I have not. I don't know why they're better than anybody else, but I love those commercials, and I can hear the song in my head. Limu
The Limu
emu.
Emu?
Yes, love it.
Okay, Michael, in 27 years of marriage, I never thought there was grounds for divorce until today.
I don't know why. It's the
This may be the
whole.
end of us, buddy. This may be the end.
Live on the
They,
pod.
Yeah.
they make me laugh. I mean,
Oh
again,
my God, they're awful.
but that's an example of, again, like this said, the Super Bowl ads that come out, like the amount of sales that come from Super Bowl ads. A lot of
I am
people
currently
love an ad.
disappointed that my children carry your DNA.
Anyway, that they will buy into an ad. They'll like the ad, remember it, talk about it, but they won't go buy the product. Does it translate into sales? That's the thing. And not real quick, like I had this conversation with a client the other day, and they were like, this, and I said, is that going to sell more of this? Yes, it may get more eyeballs, and that's a good thing. From a branding perspective, we want people talking about us. We want to have a culture. We want to have those things, and it may end up somewhere down the line, but does it translate? Does it translate?
Yeah.
And the Limu Emu thing is a great example of that. It hasn't made me do anything, but I like it. You don't like it. We both haven't changed insurance companies, but there's an audience somewhere that's going to respond to it, I would think, just from the sheer volume.
Well, I think you raise a good point, and the point, the purpose of marketing is attention, and how are we earning attention? So I think the tactics to earn attention today have had to become so extreme because it's so competitive, right? If there's 24 hours in a day and each human has one brain and two eyes, and there's two screens, right? Call it a phone and maybe a bigger screen. That's the supply, right? Like there's only so much attention in there, and then it's like, cool, what are people and brands doing to earn that attention? It's getting really, really competitive. So they are having to do these insane things that might never have been done before. And so I think what's really interesting is this idea of how are we earning someone's attention, and how do we actually think about who we're competing with? So I'll give you an example. When I was sitting at Red Bull, we weren't sitting there looking at what Monster Energy was doing, or Rockstar. We were looking at what is BuzzFeed doing? What is Lad Bible doing? What is World Star Hip Hop doing? Because that's ultimately who we're trying to compete with. If we're trying to reach men between the ages of 18 to 34, that's where they're spending their time. So how can I make something that's good enough that's going to pull them off of the backyard wrestling video that's been filmed on an iPhone and somewhere that's like the craziest viral clip, right? And so understanding that they're like, everyone is now thinking like this. So what are we going to do to cut through? And I think about, in financial services specifically, we do a lot of work in financial, and I get, this idea of, oh, well, we're regulated, we're different. I just think that's a crutch. I think that, yes, you are regulated, but that doesn't mean that you have to be this like bland, vanilla, whatever. And to your point, the fact that you actually pulled up an example from an insurance company, oh my gosh, like cha-ching. I don't think anybody really cites that usually as like, oh, that campaign, like, oh, that thing from insurance.
I
With
do like the
insurance,
progressive ads.
well, see, here's the thing. So you have Progressive, you
Yeah.
have the
Brilliant.
Lizard, you have the Emu,
Yep.
and you have Liberty, right?
Yep.
So you have four very clever
Okay,
creatives.
no, I got to correct you. Hold on. Um, the emu is Liberty, and you skipped Mayhem. So bring yourself back around.
Is the Emu Liberty? No.
Yes.
Okay. Well, they have two different spots.
That's
They have
brilliant, though. The fact that he doesn't even know that it's from the same brand, but that
I
actually
don't.
is
He
smart.
also doesn't
That's
know
good.
who his current insurance is
But
with.
that's
So we
good.
can't really use him as a source.
Yeah.
God. Anyway, but
I
the
s-
Liberty, the guy that stumbles over the word,
Yeah.
they're for the Statue of
Yeah,
Liberty.
yeah.
I have no idea it was the same campaign. But
Yeah.
my point is, yes, it's great because it's memorable, but it's also zero differentiating in a way because they're all kind of the same. They're all like you just said, they're all trying to tack on to that same thing, And so does that water down the process to where I can't even tell you which one's which? And at the end of the day, they're probably all the same. Insurance is insurance to a certain degree.
Yeah.
They never talk about why they're different or why they're special, other than, hey, we're cool and creative.
Well, I think you raise an interesting point where I think the job of marketers is to keep the audience ready until, engaged and ready until they're willing to buy. So the fact that you didn't necessarily convert today, that's not a bad thing. The
Yeah.
fact that you remembered it should be actually chalked up as a win. And I think, this needs to be talked about more. Marketing and sales are different functions. What we're talking about is
Fact.
marketing. And if marketing's job is to keep the brand top of mind and in a positive light, even if you think it's bad, like, oh, that was so bad, but like it was so bad that it's good, cool. That's a win. That's a touch point, right? You're not going
Yeah.
to necessarily buy on the first, like, especially with insurance. I feel like people don't see a single thing and then off they go and convert, right? So I actually think there's an interesting conversation there around marketing and sales. And I think what's been unfair for marketers oftentimes is that sales things have been put onto marketers when it's actually a different function. And I think e-commerce has really driven this because it's hard to, like, where is the line in the sand? And it's typically sitting with the same function. But marketing and sales are fundamentally two different functions and practices within a business.
Well, and then you're right. I mean, because expectations are often not fair either. Because well, I've ran. How come I'm not converting? I have all this stuff out there, and all this other
Yeah.
stuff. Well, what else are you doing? What's the secondary entry point? Like,
Yeah.
are you the follow up? Where is the once they do get to the call to action, what is the response to that? And
Yeah.
all those different things. There's so many other pieces to it. But if you just
Yeah.
expect marketing to do all the heavy lifting, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah. And I think about, we used to say this at Red Bull all the time. Whether you buy the sugar water or not, you're going to spend time with our brand. So whether you consume the drink or not, you're going to spend time with us. You're going to spend time on redbull.com because the content is going to be so interesting. You're going to spend time on Red Bull TV because the content is so great. You're going to follow us on social because the content is so great. And what we were betting on, and what they still bet on, is that people are going to view the brand as awesome. There's so many people that I've met, they're like, Red Bull's awesome. I've never ever had the drink, but it's awesome. Cool. Well, just like, a ton of people buy the drink. That business is growing. They're private, but their business is growing over and over and over again. So, there's something to be learned there. And so
Yeah,
I
and
think
that's
about that from like a value perspective. How can marketers provide value and not always just go buy now? And I think that's the point with what you said about that insurance example. Most people think, oh, well, marketers providing value is look at the benefits of our product. No, no, no. When we think about value, think about educational value, entertainment value, inspirational value, informational value, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we as marketers, unfortunately, haven't necessarily pushed back on we need to provide value to people. We can't just go in for the sell. We can't just go in and try and hook up on the first date. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I think Red Bull is one of those examples of like tribal mentality of, that's representational of who I am. I mean,
Hmm.
I think Apple invented that whenever people were slapping Apple stickers, think and their campaigns early on, it was
Yeah,
like, I'm an Apple guy. That says a lot about who I am.
of
And I
course.
want to make sure everybody knows it,
Yep.
just like now it's like CrossFit,
Yep.
what's the first rule of CrossFit? Tell everybody you do CrossFit, or Tesla, oh, I drive a Tesla, it's like they're tribal.
Hey,
I'm just saying, but
don't make fun of my people.
but yes, you're one of them. But I drive a Jeep, so I'm a Jeep. Like
There it is.
you can't wait
There
to share
that
your
tracks.
stories. Oh, what kind of Jeep do you drive? Oh, well, I have this. Oh, really? Do you have this? Do you have this? Oh, you
Yeah.
have that. Okay. And you're giving the wave, and you got a duck, and you become part of that culture. And again, it's not just about you feel if you belong, but it becomes representational of who you are. And I think
Yep.
that goes all the way down to B2B businesses. I mean, who you do
Totally.
business with, who do
Yeah.
you work with? That says a lot about who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think that the way that you build that tribal mentality isn't by going buy this now every single time.
Yeah, it's a good way to
And I think
kill it.
that's the thing, right? Like so many, and unfortunately, so many marketing teams are probably having the gun put to their head to be like, okay, what have you done for me lately? Buy now.
I was
And
about to say
actually
it's really
think that
hard.
what's so interesting is the C-suite is having to report on things quarterly, but marketing isn't necessarily a quarterly success thing. You can have little quarterly successes from different things that you're doing, but like the example of Apple, that was in the brand's DNA from the beginning. The example with Red Bull, that is in the brand's DNA from the beginning. Now, people can kind of heckle from the cheap seats and go, oh, wow, look at what Red Bull did. But they didn't see the 30 years of them investing in that. Like, Red Bull was doing this in 2010, right? So only in 2015, people were like, oh, wow, marketing like a media company. We should think about that. And then, but they also don't realize the cost behind it. You know how many people it takes to do that? Like the scale in which we operated at when I was there, when I left in 2016, we had 1,000 social media managers that could publish on a Red Bull account. We had 400 social media accounts, and we had 100 million followers when I left in 2016. It's way bigger now, and we were publishing 650 pieces of content across those 400 accounts a day. So that's not even the dollar amount to produce the content. Just think about the headcount costs there, right? That is
That's
a
a lot.
huge investment. Now, I'm not saying every brand should go do that, but why I bring that up is the amount of time that I've walked into banks or retailers or whatever, and they say, we want to be the Red Bull of XYZ. And I go, that's cute. I love the ambition. But do you actually understand the operational change that's going to need to happen? And is your CEO and board bought into that? Because like the cost there to do it is crazy.
Yeah, I have 5,000 followers. Oh, yeah, like we're not there yet. You don't have the bandwidth, and none of that, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it's a long play. We have a client, I won't mention any names, but had a great plan for them. We were executing it. It was moving through, and it's with branding especially, it takes time. And we were part of that educational process of putting things out there, not being hard selling. And they had a new marketing director came in, and he immediately was like, "We need this, this, and this. We need to have a tag on everything. We need to call them to action. We need to have them buy." And I'm like, "You're killing this. You're killing this because." It's not, you may see some short wins in that, but you're not going to get the long-term gains that you're hoping for, and it's just, it's a constant battle because everybody needs, not everybody has a huge budget and they need that small budget to work quickly. And it's hard to convince them to stick with long-term goals,
Yeah, but it's so funny because I think that metaphor extends into life, right? Like if you take a long-term view on anything, saving money, working on your health, whatever it is, things take time. Yeah, there might be little quick wins that you get, but like greatness takes time. We all know this intrinsically, we just don't like it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if we actually follow the fundamentals for a long period of time, good things start to happen. It's just crazy. No one talks about the fundamentals because they're the fundamentals. They're not sexy.
Yeah.
Fact.
Simple, not easy. But I think that pushback is really hard. I empathize for marketers because the pressure from the C-suite is real. What are we doing this quarter? I have to report these business results, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the struggle is that most marketers aren't very good at speaking business. They're good at speaking marketing. And there's this huge disconnect between those two languages. And so that's something constantly that we're talking to our customers about is how can they get really clear on starting to take what they're doing from a marketing perspective, translating that into business language that dovetails into what the CFO wants to hear, what the COO wants to hear, what the CEO wants to hear. And how can you actually take what they're saying and tie that into what you're doing from a marketing perspective? And again, it's not the sexy campaign, right? It's not the big sexy campaign or the new branding or whatever it is, but it's like this fundamental infrastructure that needs to happen, and alignment of language and definitions of things, getting everybody on the same page so that you can fight for budget later or justify spend later or et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and if everybody's not on the same page, all it takes is a couple of bad touch points to derail a prospect. You gotta have that alignment.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, I feel like we could start a second hour and be totally fine with it, but we will eventually start losing listeners. And I take our, statistics that 97% listen to the end very seriously. So I don't want to screw that up for them.
Yeah.
So Charlie, what are the parting words of wisdom? What do you want people to have learned from this time together so they can do their stuff better in the future?
Yeah, I think there's a few phrases that come to mind. Don't listen to what people say, watch what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And to quote the great Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, fish where the fish are.
Nice.
And that's, yes, that was to do with investing, but that also has to do with marketing. If at the end of the day, we're trying to get people to pay attention to us, we need to go fishing where the fish are. And the way that you figure out where to fish where the fish are is you don't listen to what people say, you watch what they do.
Nice. Nice way to bring it back around full circle. That was good. Where can the people find you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. So yeah, people can slide into my DMs there. My email is listed on my LinkedIn profile, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But you can, if you want to email me, my email's in my LinkedIn bio. Otherwise, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post a ton of content there, and
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, you were awesome, and this was great. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait until the next one.
Indeed.
There's
We'll do a
definitely
part
another
two.
conversation. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we weren't even touching the surface yet. For sure. All right, Charlie, thanks so much. And to everybody listening, we appreciate your time, and we'll see y'all next time.
When the day is through.